I'm very happy that Mr. Ivor has been able to join us. And I have been following the stock exchanges. So in the MSME exchange, I was surprised. There are just 320 or something like that entities which are listed on the BSE. So that's why I thought that shows the state of things, that why. So I requested Mr. Ivor to touch upon that issue. So over to you, Ivor.
Good afternoon to all my fellow panelists and also to all the participants on this forum today. Great.
Yeah.
So, I obviously the topic I'm going to touch upon is equity financing for MSME, but I just want to share a couple of thoughts. All of you have heard what the other panelists had to say in terms of how you need to think about your businesses in the post-COVID world, right? From my perspective, I'm looking at COVID. I think, this is an event which hopefully will happen once in our lifetime. And therefore, I've termed it as a doomsday event. I don't think it could come anything close that gives us the experience of a doomsday event, right? And therefore, it is kind of putting us at the starting point of, everything that we do in our lives. For me, like a lot of the other panelists also mentioned that the use of the word, the prefix, right? For me, the operative word is reset. I think this event has helped us, forced us to reset not just our personal relationships, but also our business relationships. So basically, it's putting us at ground zero. I think we have to look at this as the starting point and start again doing the groundwork and building our businesses and our relationships, from base to ground to taking it to the next level. Clearly, when you talk about rebuilding, you have to look at, from a business standpoint, you have to look at supply chain, you have to look at demand, you have to look at productivity. So you have to look at the entire value ecosystem, right? You cannot take anything for granted, and I think businesses who do not pay attention will fall below the leadership positions and will struggle to do business in the post-COVID world. Okay, so with that, and therefore I think the session has been with Anuj and his team has rightly coined it: reimagine, rebudget, and revive. And I thank him and his team for putting together this session for us today. When I look at what all the panelists have said, I think for me, each business today has to think about strategizing at 5 different levels. Okay, health and hygiene, which today takes the top of the list, followed by business continuity. You need to now stabilize your businesses and your operations before you can think of anything forward. The third important leg in that process comes efficiency. I think at some stage, once you stabilize your businesses, you'll need to start thinking about how do I build efficiencies. And a lot of my panelists have spoken about, you need to start thinking about budgeting, you need to start thinking about cost, you need to start thinking about your relationships and how do you do your client relationship management, both with the suppliers and with your consumers. The fourth important element, and the one that I will talk about today, is on rationalizing your finances. I know historically, a lot of MSMEs would have used debt as the primary means of fundraising, but I think you need to now think about options or opportunities beyond pure debt. And the fifth leg in that stool or the strategy is you need to start evaluating opportunities, right? So there will be newer opportunities that will come up, and businesses should keep their eyes and ears open to take advantage of those opportunities. So for me, these would be the 5 key elements on which businesses should now think about creating strategies as they look to survive and grow in the post-COVID world. Sorry, I'm going to just do a lot of my talking in English because that's the language I'm most comfortable in. But as and when I think I can say a few words in Hindi, I will feel free to do that. So please pardon my my dialect. Great. So coming back to this presentation, right? On using equity as the means of financing. Now, I'm sure this is a topic that all of us are well aware of. It's not something new, and therefore I think all the points that I would cover are something that would act as a refresher to this audience. But what I would like to do as part of this presentation is obviously share my experiences of my interactions with the MSMEs in terms of their concerns, their myths about using equity financing as a means of raising capital and growing the businesses. Yes, so here I've put together a very simple representation of how does equity financing actually work. On one side, you have the investors, and the investors fall into multiple categories. You have the institutional investors like the banks, the financial institutions, the large pension funds, the insurance funds, etc. Then you also have the private equity funds, and a lot of them have now invested very heavily into India, and there is opportunities for them to do more. And then you also have the retail investors, you have the HNIs. So all of these people are the people with money, and they're looking at opportunities to invest. So they will either invest directly into corporates, or they will invest into corporates through the public market route, wherein the exchange, which is both the NSE and the BSE, will play a very active role. Okay. I think now in the list of investors, we also need to add the government, because the government has announced a 50,000 crore fund of funds that they will invest in MSMEs. Obviously, the fine print needs to be, the devil is in the fine print. And as one of my co-panelists said, is this old wine in a new bottle? Only time will tell, because SIDBI has had a fund which invested only in startups. Well, I'm not going to comment on what has transpired from that exercise, but I'm hoping that the 50,000 crore fund will be more efficiently utilized to grow MSMEs that show the growth potential. Next slide, please. Sorry, can we move? Yes. Okay, great. So in the next slide, and this is more theoretical because this is how I believe that MSMEs should look at their funding options as they journey through the various life cycles in the growth of their business. So at the bottom of the pyramid, you start off by using your own capital, by borrowing from friends, family, relatives. You would also collateralize your assets, your personal assets, and you grow your business. Right? You come to a stage when you know that you would need to definitely go out to a bank and other financial institutions to raise debt capital, and that's when you put other assets as collateral and borrow from banks. And generally, a lot of MSMEs stop at this phase in their life cycle, and you find that they do not take the leap of faith to get into the equity financing segment. And the thought I want to throw out here with this audience is, if at all MSMEs have the ambition and the desire to grow beyond where they are in the current stage and to become the next Reliance or the next Tatas or the next TCS, they will have to look at equity financing to realize those ambitions. Because trust me, a Reliance would never have become a Reliance if they had remained a private limited company, right? And therefore, one of the benefits, and I'm going to talk about the other benefits in the next slide, but one of the benefits of equity financing that is very critical is that there is no repayment, there is no fixed cost or interest cost, and you don't need to give collateral, right? But yes, there are other obligations that you need to inculcate, and we'll talk about that as I talk about the next slide. So in this slide, I've tried to represent what are the other benefits that a business can extract by using equity financing as a means of financing their business. The first one on the list is unlocking value. Now, the term unlocking value means that you need to realize the potential of the business, right? Again, the very simple example that comes to mind is Reliance. And today, when you look at the market capitalization of Reliance, it's close to 10 lakh crores, right? And if Mukesh Ambani owns, I think, a little more than 30-35% of the stock, his net worth is actually 3 lakh crores. Now, that number of 3 lakh crores would never have been visible had Reliance been a private limited company. So this is a generic definition of unlocking value. But however, when you think of unlocking value, you should think of unlocking value not only from the perspective of promoters, but you also need to think about unlocking value for employees. You're unlocking value for your other shareholders or other stakeholders. You are probably unlocking value even for society at large. So as you build and grow your business, obviously you will create employment opportunities and you will help the nation grow. And that's a very important element when you think about unlocking value. Again, I want to just also skip to slide number 9. When we talk about unlocking value, and I want to give another example. And I think people who have been tracking the equity markets, this news would have never escaped anybody's attention, right? Jio, a private limited company, has raised 78,000 crores for a 17% dilution. And look, they have raised money from a lot of marquee investors. So on one hand, you have the whole COVID situation. People are struggling to survive in their respective businesses. There's a lot of stress. But there is a company that's able to raise money, and not just in a few 100 crores, but this is more than 1,000 crores. And doing it in a way that makes a big bang announcement to a lot of the global audience. So this is the power of unlocking value, right? Definitely you have Reliance, which has invested a lot in building the Jio brand. They would have taken, I think, loans of in excess of 2 lakh crores or more to build the whole infrastructure. There is a huge interest cost burden on the company, and the strategy from Reliance is very clear that they want to become debt free by 2021. And as part of that strategy, they are going to dilute a lot of their equity to bring in outside investors to invest in the company. Okay, so I think unlocking value is a very significant value proposition. The other important benefits that you would be able to secure is branding. Now, being a listed company, it puts you in the eyes of a very different set of category of market players, right? The financial institutions, the private equity investors. Also, you find a lot of strategic investors that will come and invest in your company, depending upon the value proposition you have to offer. And that could also open up other opportunities for your company to either expand locally or even expand globally. So the cost for looking at equity financing is not a cost you should think of. It should be thought about an investment which will help you create a branding and a visibility for your organization. Okay. One of the important, again, the other benefit is employee retention. Now, employee retention, again, I want to take an example here, right? If people on this group have tracked the DMart listing, again, a brick and mortar company, just went about opening up retail shops, all across the length and breadth of this country, doing food retailing and, general retailing. And today, that company is in the top 10 when it comes to market capitalization. And their CEO, his name is Neville Narona. He was given stock options by the company, and today his stock options are worth 1,000 crores. So an employee, having a net asset of 1,000 crores, right? And as one of my previous panelists also said, in times of difficulty, or when there is a stress on the balance sheet and the cash flows, you need to start thinking about variable cost options of rewarding employees. It's very easy to say, okay, let's cut down on cost, right? But would that act as a motivation for the employee? Or is the better option to say, okay, let's go to a variable cost model where I will pay my employees a certain fixed cost, and as the company grows, they will also be able to reap the benefits of that growth. So think about a variable cost model, and I think the ESOP plan, fits very well when you want to not only attract but also retain talented employees into the organization. And the last point is, I think it's not the last point, but there will be multiple other benefits. The competitive edge. So again, a listed company or a company which has good corporate governance, has strategic investors on board, is always given a higher rating, and that helps you secure a lot more contracts, not only locally but also globally. I think these are the examples that we've seen as we've advised companies, and these are really tangible benefits that a company can seek to realize as they look at equity financing for meeting their financing obligations. Sorry, next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, great. So, like I said in my previous slides, when you talk about equity financing, either you can get equity financing directly from private equity investors, or you can use the public market route. So here, I would like to focus a couple of slides only on the public market route, because the private equity financing, again, is a very separate topic and would need some more time, and maybe a topic that Anuj and his team could help set up for us at a very different forum. So when it comes to equity financing and using the public market route, so both the stock exchanges today, both NSE and BSE, have created a platform for SME companies to raise capital through the public market route. And this started way back in 2012, and we've been 8 years in that journey till date, right? One of the key important elements for this group to think about is that the criteria has been kept very, very limited so as to attract SMEs to tap this marketplace. The norms are very, very light touch. And therefore, a lot of MSME companies should be able to easily match the criteria or meet the criteria. So what are the criteria? The criteria are, one is your paid up capital post issue should be less than 25 crores. You should at least have 3 years of operational track record. You should have a positive net worth, and your net tangible assets should be equal to 3 crores. I think it was 3 crores earlier. BSE has just brought in a new notification wherein they have reduced the 3 crores to 1.5 crores. So these criteria, I'm sure most MSME companies in this country would be able to, tick the box at. And therefore, they should consider equity financing as one of the options to raise money. There are other requirements, but again, like I said, the requirements are very, very light touch and shouldn't cause a lot of strain on the companies in being able to match those, or in being able to meet those requirements. Okay. In terms of timelines, so generally, if you want to raise money through a public market route, you should expect that it will take a good 3 to 6 months to complete the whole process end to end, right? And once your company is able to match the criteria that is defined by both the exchanges, I think you should then leave the rest to the experts, as in the merchant bankers, the company secretaries, the chartered accountants who also play a role, for all these intermediaries to then help you complete all the necessary due diligences and other obligations that you would need to complete to be able to list the company, right? So there are multiple processes in this whole journey, and like I said, the intermediaries will take the responsibility of handling all those processes. So the only thing that the promoter needs to be worried about is, I need to ensure that my company matches the criteria, and then leave it to the experts to handle the rest. In terms of what is the services that Indorient we do. So Indorient, we are merchant bankers. We are category 1 semi-registered merchant bankers, and primarily we can help companies raise money through any of these methods that I've just articulated, right? But what I want to do is spend some time to just talk about what have been my experiences with MSMEs in terms of raising equity finance. And as Anuj rightly said, right? So how come we just had 321 companies listed on the BSE. So you got 321 on the BSE, and you got 206 odd on the NSE, which makes a total of 527 companies listed till date. And we're talking about a journey of the last 8 years, right? And when you talk about how much funds have been raised, so you're talking about something in excess of 6,000 crores have been raised as capital through these listings. Now, let's look at a comparative. When you look at China, for example, on an MSME marketplace, you've got good 8,000 plus companies that have been listed, and they have raised 10 times the amount that has been raised in India. So that's the size of what's happened in the Chinese marketplace. And I think at some stage, if we intend to compete and we want to overgrow China, then our SME marketplace would need to look something very similar. And I hope that happens sooner rather than later, right? Given that, when we look at our MSME ecosystem, we have more than 6 crore MSMEs, which I think it would be much higher than the MSMEs that are currently in China. So therefore, the potential is there, but what is it that is holding back MSMEs from exploring this route? So I've got a list of pointers that, like I said, I've looked at through my interactions with MSMEs in the past, and I just want to, take up them in some sequence. So the first is, MSMEs always worry about, is there, what is the risk in taking equity capital? Like I said, you look at all the benefits. You looked at, okay, there's no interest cost. I always go back to and ask the MSMEs, when you went to take bank finance, did you ask the banker, what is the risk? I'm sure you would have never asked that question because you needed the money, right? So that itself should answer your question. Would I lose control of my company? Till date in India, I don't think there's been a hostile takeover. Not to my knowledge. Maybe I could prove wrong. There could be one stray incident, but there's never been an instance of hostile takeover. So even though you're diluting 25% of your company, you still retain majority shareholding of your company, and that itself should give you the confidence that you will retain ownership of your company, right? Look at Reliance again. Ambani owns 33% or a little more of the company, but he calls all the shots and he takes all the decisions in the company. So the whole myth of would I lose control is absurd. One of the important elements is to update your corporate governance, right? You have to strengthen your corporate governance. You have to clean up your books. There's the requirement that you have to onboard independent directors, and all of these things will be very important in making sure that investors who invest in your company, they have the confidence that the company is well run and will be able to give them the return on the capital that have been invested. Okay, great. With that, I would like to end this presentation and take any questions. Thank you.